I remember the first day of training vividly, not for the shouting or the sweat or the bone-deep exhaustion. No, I remember it for the uniform. We lined up, a ragged row of civilian bodies, soon to be hammered into a cohesive unit. They called our names, and we stepped forward to receive the neatly folded stacks of fabric that would become our second skin. Mine felt heavy, substantial. The camouflage pattern was crisp, the material stiff with newness. Or so I thought. Back in the barracks, the novelty wore off as we all changed. The fabric wasn't stiff everywhere. The elbows were strangely soft, the knees showing the faintest hint of fading, almost a ghostly impression of someone else's posture. The collar, where it would rub against the neck, was smoother than the rest. I ran my thumb over it. It felt worn in, comfortable. Too comfortable. I looked around. My bunkmate, a kid named Miller, was struggling with his collar. "This thing is scratching my neck raw," he grumbled, yanking at it. I glanced at my own. It sat perfectly. It didn't chafe or pull. It felt like I'd been wearing it for years. A weird sense of unease settled in my stomach. I dismissed it as first-day jitters. Just a coincidence. The next few weeks were a blur of drills and discipline. We learned to march, to shoot, to obey. We moved as one, thought as one. The individual quirks we arrived with were sanded away, replaced by regulation and routine. My uniform seemed to embrace this change. The soft spots at the knees and elbows deepened, perfectly matching the way I knelt to fire or dropped to do push-ups. It was like the clothes knew my movements before I did. One evening, cleaning my rifle, I noticed a tiny snag in the fabric on my left shoulder, right where the rifle sling rested. I'd never noticed it before, but it was undeniable. The threads were frayed, a small but distinct mark of wear. The strange thing was, I always slung my rifle over my right shoulder. Always. It was a habit from learning to shoot as a kid, but the mark was on the left. A cold dread, slick and oily, began to seep into my mind. I started watching the others. Their uniforms were breaking in, sure, but in random ways. A tear from catching on a branch, a stain from spilled coffee. Mine was different. Its wear was methodical, purposeful. The feeling of losing myself wasn't sudden. It was a gradual erosion. My reflection in the polished brass of a doorknob would startle me. The face staring back had my features, but the expression was placid, empty. The way I stood, ramrod straight even when at ease, wasn't my posture. It was the uniforms. I started having flashes, not quite memories, more like muscle memory echoes. The scent of pine needles in a place I'd never been. The phantom recoil of a weapon I'd never fired. The chilling sensation of mud, cold and wet, seeping through my boots, even when my feet were perfectly dry. These flashes were getting stronger. One day, during a long march, my gaze fell on the worn patch on my left knee. For a split second, the world flickered. I wasn't on a dusty training field. I was in a dense, humid jungle, the air thick with the smell of decay. Rain was pouring and I was kneeling, pressing a field dressing to a wound, not my wound. Someone else's. The vision vanished as quickly as it came, leaving me stumbling, my heart hammering against my ribs. I became obsessed. I started examining my uniform under the weak light of my bunk lamp every night. I found things. A minuscule dark stain near the cuff that, when I scratched at it, flaked away like old, dried blood. A series of tiny puckered holes on the back, almost like shrapnel peppercuts, neatly stitched over with thread that was just a shade different from the rest. Who stitched it? It wasn't me. My individuality was a ghost. My thoughts felt borrowed, my reactions pre-programmed. Was I even me anymore, or just the latest person to fill this specific set of clothes? The uniform wasn't just a set of garments. It was a container, a mold, and I was the soft clay being pressed into it, forced to take on the shape of whoever came before. The scariest part was that, sometimes, it felt right. The conformity was a strange comfort, a release from the burden of being a person. One night, I couldn't sleep. The barracks were silent, except for the rhythmic breathing of 30 other men. I quietly unbuttoned my shirt, needing to feel my own skin, to remind myself that there was a person under the camouflage. As I slipped it off, my fingers brushed against the inside of the collar near the tag. There was something there. A ridge. I took out my pocket knife and with trembling hands carefully picked at the seam of the manufacturer's tag. The stitches came away easily, as if they'd been tampered with before. Underneath, another tag was sewn directly into the fabric. It was faded, the letters blurred from countless washes and years of sweat. But I could still make them out. It was a name tape, but it wasn't my name. I didn't recognize the name at all. Below it, there was a service number. Driven by a desperate, terrifying curiosity, I snuck into the administration office the next day. The files were old, dusty, stored on a computer system that probably predated me. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my hands moving with an unnerving confidence, as if they'd typed this sequence 100 times before. I entered the service number from the tag. A file appeared on the screen. A soldier's record. The photo showed a man who looked nothing like me. His face was harder, his eyes holding a weariness that went beyond simple fatigue. I scrolled down his service history. Tours of duty in places I'd only read about, commendations, and then the final entry. Killed in action. My blood ran cold. I looked at the date. It was years ago. I kept reading, my breath caught in my throat. I scrolled down to the equipment manifest, the list of gear that was recovered. And there it was. One standard issue combat uniform. It was noted as being in serviceable condition, with minor repairs, to be cleaned, processed, and returned to supply. I stumbled back from the computer, a silent scream trapped in my chest. This wasn't just a uniform. It was his. The faded knees were from him kneeling in the mud. The soft elbows were from him taking cover. The stitched-up shrapnel holes. They were his last moments. I was wearing a dead man's ghost. The uniform wasn't just shaping me. It was overwriting me. Every time I put it on, a little more of me faded away, and a little more of him took root. His muscle memory, his instincts, his... And I looked down at my hands. They felt large, calloused, unfamiliar. I walked back to the barracks in a daze, the world feeling thin, like a cheap set piece. I stood in front of my small mirror. I put the uniform back on, piece by piece. The shirt slid on, feeling less like fabric and more like a second skin being grafted into place. As I buttoned it up, my reflection changed. The fear in my eyes was replaced by that same tired resignation I saw in the photograph. The posture straightened, the jaw set. It wasn't me in the mirror anymore. It was him. And the most terrifying part? I finally felt like I fit in. I finally felt complete. The uniform that fits too well isn't just clothing. It's a legacy. It's a tomb. And now it's mine. Or rather, I am its.